أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Suzy Ismail from Cornerstone, and I'm happy to join you again in our Ramadan Resilience program. We've covered a lot of ground in our previous episodes in which we talked about our own well-being in terms of depression and grief and sadness and anxiety, and learning how to counteract them and how best to respond to them, whether we are experiencing these mental health struggles or someone we love or someone we know may be experiencing them. In our last episode, we began to look at the intrapersonal aspects of internal dialogue, internal communication. How do you hear yourself? And this is a very important part of who we are that sometimes we don't pay enough attention to. But our self-concept is rooted often in that voice that we hear inside of ourselves. We often talk about the authenticity of the voice, because the voice that we hear inside of ourselves is sometimes pieced together from all of the people that we've encountered in our life. So for example, if we are doing something and internally we hear an internal monologue where we're hearing a voice saying, you're not good enough, you're not going to succeed, you're not going to do well, you're not pretty enough, you're not smart enough, you're not going to get whatever it is done. That voice may be made up of 1,000 other voices that we heard when we were growing up. Maybe our parents were critical in terms of how they responded to us. Maybe our teachers sometimes gave a criticism. Maybe our friends, maybe there were incidents of bullying that we've experienced. But being able to navigate through that self-talk requires an exercise that's known as memory mining. Taking a deep dive into our memories and piecing together how we came to be who we are, because all of us are essentially an amalgamation of our experiences. We know that Allah Azza wa Jal creates each and every one of us ala fitra, that we are born in the purest of states, that we are born believing in La ilaha illallah, believing, trusting, relying upon Allah. But it's our society, our circumstances that may impact us and affect us. And so when our self-concept is negative, when the self-talk that we hear is rooted in a critical voice, it may mean that our natural state of fitrah has been polluted by the words that we heard growing up. And words can hurt. A lot of times when we talk about abuse, people think, oh, well, abuse within the family is domestic violence, it's physical abuse. But we know that that's not the case. Psychological abuse, whether from a parent to a child or a spouse to a spouse, absolutely exists. It can exist in the form of gaslighting, in the form of making someone doubt themselves or doubt whether or not they know what they're doing. And unfortunately, we do see parents sometimes, because of their own generational trauma, because of the way that they were raised, perpetuating that cycle of psychological abuse without even realizing it. We may see emotional abuse, the withholding of affection, the utilizing of a breaking down of self-esteem to try to keep a child in line or to keep a spouse in line. We see issues of verbal abuse, criticism that is very harsh. Now, as you start to face the struggles you may be experiencing, as you begin to recognize and understand that your mental health is not just an outcome of the environment and the external, but it's also an outcome of the internal, you want to be able to listen to that voice and ask yourself, where did this voice come from? And go through that memory mining process, which is a guided activity that you really want to go through with a counselor, where you begin to open up the boxes of your past. And a lot of our memories we place in boxes and we seal them with duct tape and we push them to the farthest corners of our mind because we don't want to open them. But sometimes those boxes will spill over and they'll impact who we are, how we talk, how we develop relationships, and then that can have an impact on our mental health. So in order to work through a negative self-concept, in order to increase our self-valuation and self-esteem, we want to go back to those memories. We want to dissect them, open up those boxes, understand where those voices come from, and then debunk them. Realize that yes, you are more than good enough. That yes, you are more than smart enough. You are more than beautiful enough. And recognize that we are more than because Allah Azza wa Jal has created us. And He has created us in the most perfect of pictures. So I hope you'll continue to join us on iTVusa as we continue our Ramadan Resilience series and we continue to learn more about our mental and emotional well-being. Jazakum Allahu khair. Assalamu alaikum.